let's look at one of the scariest of all these submission holds, Kimura. Okay, why do I declare this one to be one of the scariest? Well, because of the incredible shearing forces that it puts on the elbow. I myself and my students are kind of known for our leg locking prowess, but some of the worst injuries I've ever seen inflicted by submission holds came not from heel hooks, but rather from Kimuras. They're the only submission holds which, in my experience, reliably separate joints to a degree where the person just simply cannot continue because the joint is just completely destroyed. You don't even see that very often with heel hooks, but you see it surprisingly often with Kimura locks. So they are a powerful, intimidating lock, and it's important that we know exactly how to get out of them. Let's start that journey by understanding what's required for Kimuras. A big theme that we're trying to push on you in this video is the idea of reverse engineering. If we're going to get good at getting out of a submission hold, it's absolutely essential that we understand exactly what the other guy has to do to us in order to break us. If we have a clear understanding of what's needed to make the move work, that's going to make it much easier for you to bring about conditions that will make the move not work when you're trying to escape from it. Okay, so let's understand right from the start that one of the key elements behind any good Kimura attack is the idea of putting the hand behind the back. Okay, once you put the hand behind the back, so much of your opponent's strength is negated. Everyone is strong when their hands are in front of them. Everyone is weak when the hands go behind the back. You see this in everyday life all the time. Okay, when police officers want to arrest a really unruly suspect, one who they believe is very threatening, they don't lock the handcuffs in front, they lock them behind. Okay, there's a big difference in human strength potential. When the hands are in front, they're very strong. When the hands are behind, very few people are strong in that position. So if we can put the hand behind the back, things are looking good. Second thing, let's come closer to the camera, Jeff. There must, at all times, be a fulcrum that goes above my training partner's elbow on the upper arm. Okay, when we lock the Kimura, I have to have the fulcrum of my elbow in the area between the elbow and the shoulder. If Placido's elbow ever slips inside, so that my elbow is below his elbow, there's going to be no braking pressure. Always, I need my elbow as a fulcrum above his. The second his elbow slips inside so that my elbow is below his, all braking pressure is lost. So there is a crucial play for control of the elbow. I want my elbow above his. He wants his elbow above mine. This will determine success or failure with Kimura. And the way this is determined is through my control of the wrist. I have to have some form of control over his wrist, and at the same time lock that wrist control in place with my own wrist. Okay, so I have a hand on his wrist and a hand on my own. Because I have control of his wrist, now when I place that braking fulcrum above his elbow, it's locked in place. If either the wrist control is lost or the elbow control is lost, the whole game is lost. Okay, I can't be in here below the elbow. I need to be above the elbow and hold that in place by controlling the wrist. If Placido ever takes my hand off his wrist and pulls it free, okay, it's going to be hard for me to hold my control in place. If Placido ever slips his elbow inside so that my elbow is below his elbow, the game is lost. Okay, so I can lose it in two ways. I can lose it at the elbow and I can lose it at the wrist. Okay, so first things first, we want the hand behind the back. Secondly, we want to make sure that we always have a robust control of the wrist and hand through a hand on his wrist and a hand on my own wrist. This figure 4 grip locks me in place and helps keep my elbow above his elbow. Anytime the hand goes in front, he feels stronger. Anytime I lose control of the wrist, the game is lost. Anytime the elbow slips, so that his elbow is now above mine, the game is lost. The other crucial ingredient in all Kimuras is the idea of head control. If the head can move, there's very little pressure that I can put on the arm. What enables me to put pressure is to immobilize my training partner's head. Once the head is trapped and can't follow my movement, that's when the breaking pressure comes on very, very quickly. Almost all of the major Kimuras involve some form of head control. Again, if the head is free to move, it's very, very hard to put any kind of serious breaking pressure on people. They can move around in response to the Kimura. So the key elements behind Kimura will always be hand behind the back, makes my opponent substantially weaker and makes the whole process of defense substantially more difficult. My elbow above his elbow as a breaking fulcrum. My hands controlling his wrist. And some form of head control, which immobilizes my opponent's head to a degree where he can't follow the movements of the Kimura. If the head control is lost and he can move in response to the Kimura, it's hard for me to get breaking pressure on him. Okay, so those are the key elements. There are other key elements. Thank you. There are other important elements to Kimura, but in a stressful situation where your arm's about to be broken, I want you not to have so many things on your mind that you can't focus on the essential things. The most important elements when it comes time to escape, the ones that are going to take you in a stress-filled situation where your arm's under tremendous pressure and you've got 3 to 4 seconds to get the hell out of there. Let's keep everything down to the basics. And those basics are, I can't tolerate my hand being put behind my back. That puts me at a big disadvantage. Okay, so that's one major concern. Try to avoid letting your hand go behind you. The moment your hand goes behind you, everything becomes more difficult. Okay, so first concern, try to prevent the hand going behind you. Second concern, understand that your opponent controls your arm at 2 critical points. The wrist through the figure 4 grip. If you can ever free your wrist, you're looking good. That's a wonderful thing. Your elbow. His elbow has to be above yours. If you can slip your elbow to a situation where your elbow is placed advantageously and his in a mechanically disadvantageous position, you're pretty much escaped at that point. The danger has been significantly reduced, and you can start working your way out and counterattacking. And then fourthly, after the hand behind the back, control of the wrist and control of the elbow is control of the head. Your opponent will almost always have to exert some kind of immobilization on your head. If you can keep your head from being immobilized, you can move in response to the threat of the Kimura and generally extricate yourself from trouble. So those are the main things that I want you guys focusing on. You know what he has to do. Those are the 4 main points he needs. Almost everything we do will be denying him those 4 things. I will, to the greatest degree possible, deny him the attempt to put the hand behind the back. I'm going to do everything I can to keep my hands in front of me. He's going to need some kind of wrist control with his figure 4 grip. I'll be looking for opportunities to deny wrist control whenever I can. He must keep his elbow placed in a mechanically advantageous position so it functions as a fulcrum over which he can break my elbow. I will always be looking to slip my elbow into a position where he no longer has mechanical advantage, where he can't use his elbow as a fulcrum to break my elbow. And then I will always be looking to deny him the ability to immobilize my head. I'll always be looking to free my head so that as I get put under the stress of the Kimura, I can move in response and hopefully get myself out. Those are the 4 key elements that I want you to focus on with Kimura. There are others that are important, but those are by far and away the 4 most important. As I said, this is not a situation where you have time to think about all the little details. You've got 2, 3, 4 seconds to get out of there. Okay, so let's focus on those 4 things. Almost everything that we do to get out of the various Kimuras that we look at will have those 4 elements in mind. Now, we've looked at what the other fellow needs in order to break you with Kimura, and now our whole effort is to deny him these things and work our way out. The first thing that we define, arguably the most important of the of the 4 ingredients of a successful Kimura was getting your opponent's hand and putting it behind the back. So when we're the defensive guy, our whole effort is to keep the hand in front of us. Now, this leads to a pretty interesting battle. He knows what Kimura is. Presumably it's one of his favorite moves. He's probably got a bunch of tricks to make the hand go behind your back. How are you going to deal with this? How are you going to make sure when there's this battle, he wants the hand to go behind the back, you don't want it to go behind the back? Who wins this battle? Okay, you need some tricks to make sure it goes in your favor and not his. Okay, first trick, put the hand inside your own thigh. Okay, this will give a hook or a clasp, which will make it more difficult for your opponent to extricate your hand and whip it behind your back. So if we have Placido, bottom position, go the other way, in a situation like so, where he catches my wrist and locks on the beginnings of a Kimura. If Placido gets my hand in behind my back, that's a serious issue, regardless of the position that we're in. I'm demonstrating from top side control. Obviously, this is not the most common position for people to hit with Kimuras, but it demonstrates well what's going on here. Whenever someone goes to get a hold of that Kimura grip, we're going to put our leg up on the same side. He wants the hand behind my back. I don't want that. A safe way for me to deal with this is to take my hand and hold my own thigh. So when Placido goes to put my hand behind my back, he's really fighting the strength of my legs. If I just have an unsupported hand here and I just try to flex my arm, Placido has 2 hands on my 1 arm. When he quickly puts my hand just a fraction behind my back, something interesting happens. Here, because I weigh more than Placido, I may well be stronger than him. But the second he gets my hand even close to my back, my strength begins to diminish, for the simple reason that the human body is set up to exert strength when our hands are in front of us, but poorly adapted to exert strength when the hand starts going behind. So even though under ordinary circumstances I might be slightly stronger than Placido, under these circumstances I'm not. As his hands are in front of him and my hand goes behind me, you now have a situation where a weaker man can overcome a stronger man. Here, because my hands are behind me, or at least one hand, the hand that counts, is behind me, I can't exert whatever strength I have. But Placido's 2 hands are in front of him, and as a result, he can exert their maximal strength. So while I'm operating at, say, 15% of my potential strength with 1 arm, he's operating at close to 100% of his potential strength with 2 arms. And that's how smaller people can beat bigger people with Kimura. So our whole thing is to make sure once he gets that grip that we put our leg up and lock inside. Now guys, let's make a clear point here. Never try to take your hand to your leg. So if my leg is up here, okay, I don't try to take my hand to my leg. What I do is I take my leg to my hand. Here, I put my leg up. Placido's trying to put my hand behind my back. I can't just use my strength to try and bring my hand in. He'll beat me. So what I do is I bring myself to the endangered arm. When he tries to put my hand behind my back, it's impossible now. And now my leg pulls my endangered arm back in. Once my endangered arm is back in, he tries to bring it out. It's very, very difficult. And now I make it even more difficult by a simple mechanical trick. I bring my head over his head. The further my head from Placido's head, the more danger there is of him of extracting my arm and putting it behind my back. So once I've taken away the initial danger, my thing is to bring my head over his. When Placido goes to take my arm out now, it's significantly more difficult for him. The further my head from his, the more danger there is of my arm being taken out and me being compromised. Okay? So some initial things here. When someone gets a hold of our wrist, our first thing is to bring our leg to our hand and put it inside so he can't get it behind the back. Then from here, we start bringing our head over his head. Now when he tries to extract, very, very difficult. Okay? An alternative to putting your hand inside your own thigh is to put it inside your own hip and stomach. So sometimes when someone locks on a Kimura, and the hand is in close, I would just put it across my own stomach. When he goes to lift it out now, again, it's a difficult thing. He goes to lift it out. I focus on bringing my head over his head. Okay? Now, another Loctite, buddy. Another trick under these circumstances. When someone goes to apply pressure on the Kimura and take the hand out, we will often step in the direction he's trying to move us. He's trying to take us across the body like so. We will take our body here and just step over with our legs. So when he goes to put the hand behind my back, he's actually rotating me around the corner into situations where now all of his ability to put the hand behind my back has been lost. I've kept my hand in front of me and fallen into a situation where now, Loctite, buddy, Loctite. From here, we're in a situation where we can start going through and into our various counterattacks, where we turn his attacks into ours. So once again, here we have the endangered arm. I bring my hand in front of my stomach or inside my own thigh. Okay, here I'm demonstrating with the stomach. He wants a situation where he can draw the hand out and put it behind my back. Okay, I want a situation where initially I stop him with hand position and head position. But then I actually want to get out of these situations. If I have an ability to step around his head, that will literally reposition me from one side of his body to the other and completely take away the danger and actually set up counter offense. So from here, we'll bring our head down. So he wants my head on this side of the body. If he can keep my head on this side and put my hand behind the back, yep, he can break me. Okay? So our whole thing here is once we've got our head up, is we will bring our head to the same side. When he goes for the Kimura pressure now, very, very difficult. Remember, guys, there's no other way to say this. If your head can move freely, getting out of Kimuras is quite easy. If your head cannot move freely, it's awfully, awfully difficult to get out. Because I'm in top side control, my head has no obstructions. And as a result, it's quite easy for me to step around my opponent and go into counter offense. Okay? This will become an important theme later on. So, here, nothing on the head to obstruct us. There's no reason why I can't bring my head and move it over to the same side. Okay. Now, from here, this is going to make it very easy to step over our training partner's body. Once we step over the body, it's very easy for us to start going into counter offense. Arm bars, triangles, etc., etc. So once again, the first method of saving ourselves is to put a hand inside our own thigh or a hand inside our own stomach. Another method of defending yourself is simply to lock your own hands, okay? So if we're in, say, half guard, and someone comes in and locks up on Kimura, initially I can put the hand inside my own thigh. Initially I can put the hand inside my own stomach. Another option here is to lock my own hands, okay? As Placido goes to put pressure on us, we bring our head over his head and it ends up putting counter Kimura pressure on him. It forces him to release the Kimura. He's in considerable pain, and then you can start going into your own counter offense from there. Okay, so someone locks up a Kimura. Okay, one thing I can't do is have the hand go behind me. That's never acceptable. So we put the hand inside our own thigh, hand inside our own stomach, or in this case, we lock our own hands and posture up. Because my head is free to move, it's easy for me to move my head directly over his and put pressure on him. It starts to force his arm free. And then from here, we'll see later on, there's a whole ton of counter offense from these kinds of situations. Okay? So that's our first thing, putting our hand in a safe position. You've got a bunch of good options, hand inside the thigh, hand inside the stomach, locking your own hand. Now, we looked at the idea of putting our hand into a safe position when we were on top. Please understand that the same themes occur in bottom position. As soon as I see someone interested in a Kimura, they have to grab my wrist. Off that wrist control as they come over the top and start locking. What I can't do is have them bring my shoulder off the mat. That exposes an area for them to put my hand behind my back. Okay? So as soon as we see them lock up that Kimura, it's no secret what's coming next. We put our hand inside our own thigh. So when he tries to lever my hand behind my back, it's far more difficult than it would be if I had an unsupported hand. Remember, guys, an unsupported hand is a very vulnerable hand. Get on your 2 knees, possibly. From here, an unsupported hand is a very vulnerable hand. Okay? So if Placido sticks my hand, take my arm away from me. Away. If Placido has my hand isolated away from my body, it's not realistic for me to think that I can take my hand back. He's pinned my hand on the floor. So what am I going to do? I'm going to walk my leg to my hand. I don't try to bring my hand against his 2 arms to the leg. I bring my body in and I walk the hand in and get it in place. Now, Placido and I are going to get into a battle where he tries to extract my hand out. Go.
It's incredibly strong.
And it's him fighting with his hand against the strength of my legs. Okay? Guys, you cannot do this kind of thing. You cannot try to take your hand back to your own thigh. He's got 2 hands and his body weight is pinning your hand to the mat. You would have to be literally 2 or 3 times stronger than your opponent to get your hand from here, relax, right? To get your hand back to the thigh. Placido weighs significantly less than I do, and I can tell you right now, in all honesty, there's no way in God's green earth I could, if he pinned my hand to the mat, I would not be able to get my hand back to my own thigh. I promise you of this. You can experiment with your friends later on. What I can do is I can bring my thigh to my hand. I can't bring my hand to my thigh, but I can bring my thigh to my hand. So he pins my hand to the mat. I take my legs as close as possible, and then I put my fingers on, and I finger walk as my thigh goes underneath. Once I get my hand inside my hamstring, guys, don't be satisfied with putting your hand on your knee. That's not good enough. You need your fingers all the way inside your own hamstring. Now, Placido wants to put my hand behind my back. He's fighting my legs. Go, buddy.
Nope.
Now I can bring it in. Okay? Because I'm using leg strength to save myself. Again, from here, I cannot realistically bring my hand in. It would take the strength of a titan to be able to do that. From here, look how I bring my legs to my own hand. Once my hand goes in, I finger walk as the knee walks over. I get inside my own hamstring. Now my leg brings my hand back, and we're starting to subvert our training partner's grip. Sometimes, when your opponent first comes in and grabs the wrist, just the wrist, when he first comes in, lock. No, with your hand, your right hand. When he first comes in and makes a grip, I can subvert him at the level of wrist control and deny him initial wrist control. Okay, we'll be talking about that later. But once he gets the figure 4 grip, that kind of thing is going out the door now. Once he gets the figure 4 grip and starts pinning my hand, it's about me bringing my leg to the hand and getting the fingers inside our own hamstring. Now, you can bring everything back in. Okay? Now when he tries to put my hand behind the back, it's going to be awfully, awfully difficult. He's fighting the strength of my legs. And from here, we can start to defend ourselves. So whether we're in top position or bottom position, always, first responsibility, don't let the hand go behind the back for free. If he gets the hand behind the back, it should be because he knows what he's doing, he's damn good. Don't just let it go behind and say, oh, okay, now I'm in trouble, let me work my way out. It's a lot harder to work your way out when it's already behind your back. It's a lot easier when it's here in front of you. And the easiest places to put it there, inside the thigh is probably the best overall, but also inside the stomach is pretty good, and locking your own hands is pretty good, okay? Now, an obvious question for you guys is, well, what happens if he does get the hand behind the back? What do you do now? That's when you got to start rolling to get out of Kimuras, okay? Now, I'm sure all of you have seen situations where guys got hit with a Kimura and did a forward roll to get out and then got their arm broken anyway, Okay, that's unfortunate because many people think that they're just rolling for the sake of rolling. When you roll with a purpose. Your purpose when you roll out of a Kimura is to get your hand from behind you to in front of you. If you just roll and end up in the same position with the hand behind you, the roll is meaningless and you just get your arm broken in a different place. The whole idea is to roll so that your hips go in front of your hand and you get your hand back in a defensive position. So Placido, feet this way, from bottom side control, gets a hold of a Kimura and puts my hand successfully behind my back. Even though I'm in top side control, that means nothing because my hand has been put behind my back. That means Placido is in the driver's seat. If I feel my hand going behind my back, I must roll over the same side shoulder. Now, here's a tragedy about to unfold. If I just roll with my hand behind my back, and I just roll over and the hand remains behind my back and he comes up, he breaks me in a new location. He would have broken me over there and my roll only resulted in my arm being broken in a slightly different place, okay? And you see this all the time. Guys get caught with a Kimura in a situation where they still have mobility. They try frantically to roll out, but the hand position behind the back doesn't change. So the situation overall doesn't change. And as a result, they get broken a couple of seconds later than they would have been broken otherwise. When you go to roll from situations like this, it is crucial that the roll have a purpose. And that purpose is to take your hand from behind your back to in front. So as Placido goes to take me over, and I see my hand is being put behind my back, as I go to roll, my whole thing is to roll in such a way that my hand goes in front. And now when he goes to break me, you can't do it. Okay, you're in a position now where you can start to work your way out. So fellas, if you're going to roll out of a Kimura, let's make sure you do it with a purpose. Roll in such a way that your hand goes from here to here. So one more time. He comes up, whips my hand behind my back. It's like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. Okay? When I start to roll, I want to roll in a way where my leg comes through and my hand goes in front. So as he completes the roll, we find ourselves in a different situation now. Yeah, he rolled me over. Yes, he took top position, but he's not going to break my arm. Okay, and from here I can go in and start to defend myself. I'll say this to you again, fellas. Roll with a purpose in mind, and that purpose is crystal clear. Roll to take a situation where your hand is behind you, which is absolutely critical, to a situation where the hand is in front of you, which is entirely manageable, okay? Don't just roll for the sake of delaying people. Roll for a purpose and get the hand from behind to in front. Whenever someone goes to attack you with Kimura, one thing they will always need is some kind of preliminary wrist control. Now that will start with a single hand on your wrist, and then it will expand into double wrist control. So if we have a training partner, I'm demonstrating bottom side control for Placido and me on top because that's the clearest vision that you guys can see everything as it's working. Okay, because gives a very clear sense of what's happening here. Later on, as we go further into the Kimura study, we'll be looking at more realistic situations. Don't worry about that, okay? But for me to demonstrate the concepts, this is one of the clearer positions for me to do so. Okay, when Placido goes in, he needs an initial wrist control, okay? Now, he's got two choices here. He can go here with the stopper hand first, or he can go here with the frame arm first. If he goes frame arm first, he's got to come down and lock up my wrist, okay? They're both good choices, okay? So some people will come in here and go wrist control. Other people will come up and frame it first and get that frame arm wrist around my wrist, and then the stopper hand comes in, and then they lock up the figure of four. Okay, so ultimately their goal is the figure of four, and they have a choice between going in with the stopper hand first or with the frame arm first. There's good and bad to both of those approaches. Anytime you're going against someone who you know favors Kimura, and they're grabbing your wrist and their body's turning. So it's no secret what they're going for here. You see the back, they're going for the elbow. Okay, we all know what's coming next. Deny the wrist control as early as possible. Okay, so let's look at this realistic context where I'm being pinned across side. And Placido is a guy who favors Kimura. I know that to go for the Kimura, he has to bring the arm over. There's no Kimura if he has a cross face. So he's got to go reverse cross face. Now, his right hand comes down and grabs my wrist. You know what's coming next, fellas. He's going to open up that elbow. He's going to come, he's going to figure four. Okay? The second someone grabs my wrist, hold that, baby. The second someone grabs my wrist, they're going to want to push my hand down to the floor, right? So I'm just going to shrimp. And I'm going to put my knee on my own wrist. Okay? So what does he want? He wants to take my wrist up here to lock. I don't want that. Push my wrist down to the floor like you should. From here, I bring my knee inside the wrist. Now, hold on as tight as you can, buddy.
Yes, sir.
I just use my shin as a fulcrum, and from here, I just strip the wrist off, and it's gone. So every time he goes to pin a wrist down, you just shrimp and bring the hand off. Every time he goes to control a wrist, straight in, okay? Once you get control of someone, then from here, there's a ton of effective counterattacks where you can start strangling people. So once again, he's a Kimura guy, goes through, locks it, single wrist control, shrimp inside, strip, and then from the situation, go in and lock. Once you make that lock, get your knee low. I don't want any knee high over, that's going to be an ineffective triangle. I shrimp and turn off his body so that as we lock up the triangle, the situation turns into a strangle very, very quickly. So once again, he comes in, wrist control, shrimp, block, control the head, leg goes over the top, and we're in a very good triangle attack. You lock the figure of four and strangle, okay? Alternatively, from guard position, someone comes in, knocks a hand off the floor. As soon as you feel that kind of wrist control coming in, we'll never accept that kind of wrist control, okay? When he starts coming across, you know what's coming next, fellas. So we're always thread through. Go back. Where's his wrist control? It's designed to stop my arm coming forward. Strong. That's where it can't move my hand forward. There's nothing to prevent my hand moving this way. So as he comes across, you know where it's going, and you just strip the wrist out. Okay? He comes across this side. There's no way. Relax. Well, I can't bring my hand this way. That way the hand is strong, but there's nothing stopping my hand coming this way. As soon as I see the crisscross of his arms, he comes across, you know what's coming next, to strip the wrist, okay? He comes in across, boom, it's gone. He comes in across, boom, it's gone. Just deny that initial wrist control from half guard. From here, he comes in, gets that initial wrist control. Again, it prevents me moving the hand towards him. It does absolutely nothing to prevent my hand coming up the middle. So he's down. From here, I see him come across the Kimura, and there's the hand, just limp straight out. So you're just denying him wrist control, okay? From any situation where someone's on top of me, and they have my hand in the beginning of a Kimura, like so. Kimura. Okay, we're always looking to deny that wrist control. So there's always things you can do in terms of wedging inside your training partner's wrists. And from here, to stripping out. I also like thumb posting. When I thumb post inside, you can often clear wrists away, okay? No matter how strong your training partner's wrist, if you just turn the wrist out and break the grip, there's no more Kimura. Once the wrist control is broken, it's gone. So when someone comes in and locks, here, strong control. I can't move it, okay? But if I just strip wrists off, I just come in like so and strip, the grip is broken. It's illegal for me to grab any 1, 2, or 3 fingers. That's an illegal grip. You're not allowed to do that. But it is legal for me to put my whole hand on top of his, lock, and then from here, strip the grip away. Alternatively, I can block and circle. Okay, we often make use of simple wrist breaks, like so. Okay, so whether we're limping an arm out or whether we're simply snapping grips off, anytime someone comes in and locks any form of Kimura, you're always looking to deny wrist to them. Okay, Someone locks a Kimura, stay on this side, lock a Kimura. From here, he's got an obvious wrist control. It's an easy time for us to put hands on top and strip the wrist grip off, okay? Whenever I can deny a wrist grip, whether it be at the hand or the wrist itself, we put our hands in place. Whenever we can deny wrist control, lock, turning the thumb down, blocking, denying the wrist control. Whenever we can do that, it's on, okay? One of the most important methods of getting out of Kimura and actually escaping the Kimura as opposed to delaying the Kimura is elbow slipping. We saw earlier that every Kimura requires that my opponent's elbow be placed above my elbow as a breaking fulcrum. So Placido, here's my arm in here. He must have his elbow, you need to be on the side of my body. He needs to have his elbow above my elbow, like so. Okay, and if he can maintain this through the figure 4 grip that he's got, he can definitely break my arm in situations like this as my arm goes behind my back. So what we're always looking to do, thank you, is to create situations where my elbow slips inside his. Now what's holding his elbow in place is his figure 4 grip. We saw earlier that if we can slip the wrist, then everything's good. Unfortunately, many of our opponents have a very strong figure 4 grip. And if we don't get early enough on the wrist slip, then you're stuck with that figure 4 in place. And now it can be awfully difficult to slip your elbow free. So in most cases, we need some kind of assistance to slip an elbow, okay? It's difficult just to slip it in because of the figure 4 grip. Your best bets to slip an elbow are your opposite hand or your same side knee. Okay, so opposite hand or same side knee. So if Placido locks me in a Kimura, yourself, like so. One thing we want to get into the habit of is churning in towards, and then from here, I physically grab his elbow. He needs his elbow above mine, here, lock it, like so. That's what he's always looking for. So what we want is to physically pull in and help slip. If that proves inadequate, another alternative is to use our knee, and then from here we can slip through. So whenever we have a grip and it feels robust, can't slip, you need some kind of assistance. The best assistance is always the knee on the same side to break it. Or if you are physically robust and strong and the arm is bent, then from here you can use the opposite hand. The straighter the arm, the more difficult that becomes, but the easier the knee becomes. The more bent the arm, the harder to get the knee inside, but the easier to get the hand inside. So you play a dilemma between straight arm, same side knee. Bent arm, difficult to get the knee, easy to get the hand. Okay, if he locks a figure of 4, strong. It's very hard just to slip it inside, stationary with strength. You need movement. So I need to rotate like so to slip inside. I need to get my elbow, his elbow should be here, okay? I need to get my elbow inside his bicep to go inside the elbow. Here, he's in a winning position. Goes in, slip. The arm straight, slip. He locks, comes around.
Side control, sir.
As he comes around further and further, elbow slipping becomes more and more problematic. Okay, from this way to the camera. The further Placido comes around, the more problematic it becomes. And now the more I must start to move my body so I can get my knee in and slip my elbow free. You're going to find that movement is your best friend. Okay, to slip an elbow, it's very difficult from a stationary position, but it becomes surprisingly easy if I move. Please understand something. Elbow slipping is almost impossible when your opponent is on the same side as the Kimura. Okay, strong. It's almost impossible to slip it. Stay in your position. Feel strong as an ox. But as I move, it becomes easier and easier to slip. Not only does it become easier and easier to slip, it becomes easier and easier to assist. Like so. Okay? That's why having your head free becomes a big, big deal as we go further into our Kimura escapes. Because if your head's not free, you can't move. And if you can't move, you generally can't elbow slip. Okay? Now, elbow slipping has many manifestations. Say, for example, he's in turtle position, facing the camera. From here, many of our opponents like to go for Kimuras from unorthodox positions, like so. And from here, if he's smart, he can put my hand behind my back and cause problems for me. So from situations like this, we place our knee right in behind our training partner's elbow. And from here, we can elbow slip. Why? Because we're assisting with, you guessed it, same side knee. We just put our knee behind his elbow and slip free. Okay? Now, when someone locks Kimura here, another trick we can often employ sitting up is for us to take our hand through and grip the opposite wrist. Why? Because his whole goal, I'm sure you all guessed, is put the hand behind the back. When I grip the opposite wrist, when he goes to put the hand behind the back, nope, it puts a limit on how far my arm can move. When the hand comes out, there's no limit. When I come in here and lock, there's a limit. He goes to move, difficult. Even more difficult when I put my head over the same side. Now from here, we can start to use our knee as a means of slipping the elbow. Okay? So we're always looking to slip the elbow using some kind of assist. The best assists are almost always the knee. If you can't get the knee in, that usually means the opposite side hand can be used as an assist. And best of all is when you have the ability to move because your head is free. That will greatly assist in this ability of yours to slip your elbow, okay? So elbow slipping will kill any Kimura attempt, but it requires some things on your part. You have to use your knee to assist. You won't be able to just slip your elbow on someone who's the same strength as yourself, okay? So we have to use our knee to assist. If the knee is impossible, then use your hand, opposite hand to assist. It's either same side knee or opposite hand. In addition, you'll have to use turning movement, which means your head must be free. Okay, if your head is trapped, that all goes to hell. So we have to be able to move and slip. So one more time. North-south. So from situations like this, someone locks on. Because my head has not yet been pinned by my opponent, I have some mobility. The more I can turn, the easier it becomes for us to start slipping that elbow. There's going to be space to bring my knee inside. As I pull my elbow to the west, my knee pushes to the east. And that scissoring action frees the arm quite readily. If my opponent bends the arm to such a degree that I cannot get my knee inside, that will make it relatively easy to get my fingers and hand on the elbow. And then from here I can break free. If my opponent is on the other side of my body and locks up, there's no way I can get my knee in place. So now I must use mobility and change from one side of his body across to the other and then employ my slip. Okay, so once again, from here, if he's on the same side as the Kimura, here, okay, we go directly to the elbow slip. I look at his elbow position. If there's some space, I bring my knee in, and I use a knee to push towards you while I pull my elbow away, okay, opposite directions. If the arm is bent in such a way that I cannot fit my knee inside, then I substitute my hand and do the same thing. If my opponent brings his whole body around to make this impossible, then I must bring my whole body around to change. And then you can go right back into your knee slips, hand slips, etc. Okay? So this is the science behind slipping the elbow. If you can slip your elbow, you have an excellent chance of getting out of the Kimura and going into your counterattacks that we'll be looking at soon. Now, the fourth great ingredient for successful Kimuras is head control. If you can apply a Kimura to an opponent and completely dominate his movement through the head, you're going to finish a lot of people with Kimura. So whenever someone goes to apply Kimura to us, it's absolutely essential that we do our best to protect ourselves from them controlling our head. That means I won't let them lock a triangle, for example. If they're working from bottom position, if they lock a triangle around my head, defending a Kimura goes from difficult to extraordinarily difficult. If they're across my side and they step over my head and pin my head to the floor, that's bad, bad, bad. Okay, I will do anything I can to prevent an opponent from locking up my head with their legs. That requires some specialized body movements on our part. Okay, let's have a look at some of these. Just go solo. From situations where you have an imaginary opponent over your head, locking a Kimura. A first movement is a pendulum type movement, which loosens and generates movement in my lower body. My purpose is to slide further away from my opponent. Okay, I can do that by loosening with a pendulum, side to side. Once I feel things are loosened up, I can grip the floor with my feet and physically pull myself down the mat like a reverse shrimping motion that generates space between me and him. Once space has been generated, then we go into high legs, where our legs come up high towards an opponent and we turn back and face an opponent. I know that looks rather bizarre when there's no one there. Let's have a look at it now when someone is there. So, from a situation where an opponent has a north-south Kimura and their knees are over our head, there's a danger now because my head is caught between their knees that I can't really move my head much. My head is pinched between their knees and shoulders. In these situations, I have to free my head first. Now, I can do that by initially loosening things up and then posting on my training partner's leg, bicep, whatever you see is appropriate. Then from here, I'm either going to grip the floor and reverse shrimp out, or just physically push with my hand combined with a pendulum motion. And as a result, my head comes free. The second my head comes free, I have movement. Now we're in a position to elbow slip. If we present enough distance, then it's not unrealistic for us to throw legs into our opponent. This is not really a mixed strong body. This is not a particularly strong version of Juji Gatame. So what will typically happen here is as we attempt Juji, they'll go to pull away from us. But as they go to pull away, they'll leave us what we really wanted all along, which is leg submissions. And from here, we'll be able to go in and attack a much more realistic submission hold on the legs. We'll be looking at that soon, don't worry. That's the basic idea. So always what we're looking to do is to free our head whenever possible, okay? So if someone has me in Kimura across side, this is a particularly threatening form of Kimura. As they go to sit through, there's a danger now they will step over with the leg. Stepping over means my head can't move. That's a serious, serious issue, okay? So if my hand is here on the hip and I feel them go to step over, I will always walk in towards them and prevent that leg coming over. They will be looking to bring their leg back, back, and then throw it right over and trap the head, okay? So there will be a battle between your ability to restrain the leg. If they try to bring it straight forward, you can stop it quite easily. But if they're smart and they go back first, you will have to learn to frame as they try to bring it over. Try harder than that, obviously. There'll have to be some creative framing on your part. Go. And then from situations like this, you'll be able to turn inside your training partner. Okay? But you cannot allow the leg to simply step over and control yours. Okay? If I feel I'm losing the frame on the top leg, he steps back, and you feel like, man, this guy's going to step over any second now. Okay? Then if I feel I cannot frame on the top leg, I will go under the bottom leg. So I'll frame through here. Now when he goes to step over, we'll come out the back door. And then from situations like this, we can come up. This is not a particularly realistic submission hold, but it's a very weak form of Judogatami. As he goes to posture up and pull away from it, it's much more likely. We'll throw it down the stairs and start going into our training partner's legs in a much more realistic fashion. Again, we'll be looking at that shortly. So always, we're looking to prevent our opponent from controlling our head. This explains why kimuras from bottom side control are intrinsically less threatening from kimuras from top side control. So if I get caught here, it's not a particularly threatening form of kimura for the simple reason that my opponent doesn't control my head. If he were able to throw his legs up and lock a triangle, that would make my position far, far worse. Okay, so our whole thing in these situations, once we capture our leg in, because we have a free head, there's very little reason why we can't start counter-attacking a training partner under these circumstances and start going into counter-offense. Okay, once we get counter-offense out of here, you can turn this fellow's kimura radically against him and start racking up some impressive counter-submission. Again, because he doesn't control my head from these bottom positions, they're not particularly threatening. But when they're on top of you, particularly in side control or north-south positions, and the head is heavily controlled and they get kimura, that's a real threat. So our whole thing is to free the head. Once the head can move, you can start generating motion that promotes elbow slipping. Then you can get out, then you can start getting into your counter offense. Now, we've been looking at the basic principles that govern getting out of kimura. As such, they're general principles, and I'm sure you look at them, that makes sense. I've seen some escapes to kimura, and they seem to go in line with these principles you're talking about. But knowing the principles and being able to get out of a kimura under combat conditions against a tough guy who doesn't want you to get out are two different things. So a very useful drill, which you can perform with your friends, which will get you into the spirit of using these four basic ideas of escaping kimura in a practical fashion that will actually make a difference when you're sparring or in competition, runs as following. We're going to start top side control on an opponent, and we're going to give him an initial kimura. Okay, we know that from situations like this, what the game is. He wants to put my hand behind my back. Okay, we want the exact opposite. So what we're going to do is we're going to let our opponent, worst case scenario, get a hold of our hand and put it behind our back. We know now that we need a roll to recover hand position. I can't tolerate the hand being behind my back. From here, as I feel my opponent go in, we're going to roll in such a way that I can replace the hand inside. Even as he's coming over, I'm blocked. I block my training partner at the wrist, just like so. Or block here at the arm, your choice. My favorite is to block here at the hip. Okay, so that even as he comes up on top, our body's coming out. He lands and finds himself in a situation where he doesn't control my head. Okay, as he comes around the corner, we're going to bring our knee inside and we're going to elbow slip. And as a result, we're in a position now to put this man back in guard, and from here we can go into our counter offense. So a simple beginning drill that begins in a situation which is starting to teach you some important principles. We're starting to realize that as long as he doesn't control my head, he's not that scary. Okay? If he puts the hand behind the back, it's bad, but you can recover from it with a roll, provided your head can move. Okay? So he locks up, puts our hand behind the back, and from here we roll on through. Even as we come up into the roll, we want our head to be free. That's what we're really concerned with. He wants to be able to step across, put his legs through, and control our head. If he can do all of those things, come back, then he can finish up. So here, he comes up, puts the hand behind the back. We go into our roll. As we go into the roll, the hand comes here in front. We block our training partner at the hip. He wants to step over our head. We want the exact opposite. Our head comes free. Because our head comes free, we can get our knee inside, elbow slip. Legs come in, find ourselves back in a position to go into counter offense. So what are we doing? First, we're using a roll as a method of recovering hand position. Because recovering hand position is a huge part of your Kimura success. Then we're denying head control by spinning our body out. Once our head can move, we can change angles and get to a knee slip. So that we're using all the main concepts in a practical way. So here we are. He comes in, locks up. He gets the hand in behind the back. As he comes in here, we're posting on our training partner's hip. We're bringing our knee inside, slipping, and find ourselves back in a situation we can go into counter offense. Then we start playing in other situations. Close guard. If I have a hand on the floor and he sits up for a wrist, we know we're always looking to deny wrist control. Every time he comes up for a wrist, we're looking to deny wrist control. You know the Kimura is coming by a simple expedient. He has to grab the wrist and bring the arm across. Okay? The second you see his body going across the center line, you know the one direction he doesn't control is right up the middle. Now he comes across on the other side. Look how Placido has to open up his guard. And then from here, come in and get wrist control. Now, this time he succeeds in getting wrist control on me, but he's exposed his elbow to me. And we saw earlier in the video, we get through and grab a hold of our training partner's wrist. When he tries to extend the arm and put it behind my back, it's very, very difficult. Even more so, we need to focus on bringing our head over his head. Now what we have to do is high leg over our training partner's leg. As we come around the corner, we find ourselves in a situation where he tries to extend my arm, but can't because I have wrist control on him. He has wrist control on me, but I have wrist control on him. If I didn't have this wrist control, yes, he could put the hand behind my back. But this puts a limit on how far he can rotate around. He tries to put the hand behind the back, can't do it. If a man can't put a hand behind the back, can't hit me with Kimura. Okay? Well, at least not a finishing Kimura. There's other Kimuras he can do. We'll look at those soon. Now, from situations like this, we just want to strip that wrist control off. He holds tight from here. I just want to bring the hand in the one direction he can't control. And then from these situations, we throw the body in, and we end up in a superb attacking position behind our opponent. So again, knowing full well that my opponent doesn't control my head, we play this simple game. He comes up for a wrist. The one direction he doesn't control me is towards the belly button. Okay, so even if he secures the wrist, it means nothing. If he gets two hands on the wrist, okay, that's more of a problem. But there's exposure straight in here. Okay, now I bring my head right over his. We're in the perfect position now to bring the head over a high leg, like so. Now my knee comes all the way up behind my training partner. Turn around. What he would like to do is have this hand out so he can put the hand behind the back. But when I hold here, his own rib cage means that when he tries to bring it around behind the back, his own rib cage prevents him. If he tried to do some kind of crazy Udigatami straight arm lock here and extend the arm out, that too would be impossible because it puts a limit on how far it can go. In addition, it's very easy for me to turn my wrist inside his. And as a result, we can easily elbow slip. You can use a knee assist, knee here, and slip. Hold tight. If I just try to come out, it feels difficult, right? I can probably do it because I'm heavier and stronger than Placido. But if he were, say, a Gordon Ryan type here and strong as an ox, locked in tight, no matter how tight he is, you can always put your knee right in behind. And there's the dreaded elbow slip. We're always looking to use the same side knee to elbow slip. And then from this situation, we pull them straight down, legs go up, and we're in our favorite attacking position behind people. So you can use these simple drills to work the magic from bottom. Side control. So from here, first deny him the wrist. The second he gets to the wrist, we're always looking to go through and deny it. Okay? Now he comes in and seizes the wrist and begins to lock it up. I'll always deny him head control. So my arm comes through underneath his. What does he want? He wants my arm here, stuck. Okay, so that when he steps over my head, my whole body is stuck.
preferably with my arm caught in a kind of a quasi-triangle position. This is the best case scenario for him, worst case scenario for me. So when someone comes through, I'll always feed my hand through as a scoop grip. As Placido steps over my head now, our head comes out the back door. Now he tries to go and extend my elbow high, but runs right into a quasi-Judigatami lock. What do you think he's going to want to do? He's going to want to pull his body out of there. But every time he goes to pull the body out, he exposes his legs to a follow-up attack. We'll be dealing more with the follow-up attacks later, don't worry, we'll come back to that. So here we are. Kimura, he grabs the wrist, boom. And we're always going through and stripping it off. He gets the figure of 4, I know what he wants next. So we're always putting our hand inside our own thigh. He goes to put my hand behind the back. It's so difficult. Now he wants to control my head. Go back. If he can step over, sit through, step over, he can take my hand out of my thigh and break me because he controls my head. But even as he's doing this, my arm is already coming around the corner and framing the opposite hip. So we're out the back door. Okay? Now we're out the back door, we can use that knee to go straight on through. And as a result, we're in perfect position to go into our counters. Okay? So you can see there's a lot of things going on here, fellas. These simple drills enable you to use the 4 key concepts one more time, no matter where we are. Even in the worst case scenarios, bottom side control. He grabs a wrist, boom, make it a habit. Okay, and look always, if you can, to go into immediate counterattacks. Okay, the triangle is an obvious one in this situation. If he gets the wrist and locks it up, gets the figure of 4, always we're looking to get the hand in a position where he can't get it behind me. If I get into a situation like this, my hand is coming through on this side, go back. What he wants is my arm trapped in a quasi-triangle between his legs. Here, that's the best case scenario for him. If he locked the triangle, it'd be even worse. So from here, I don't want my arm trapped, okay? I bring my hand through so that as he steps over and pin my head, you need to put your head hips down. Even as he steps over and controls me, you're in a situation where you can come out the back door, you can bring that knee inside. You can go into your various forms of attack and counterattack from here, okay? These simple drills make for a solidification of all the 4 principles that we've looked at and put it in a context where they really start to make sense and really start to make a difference in your escape performance. Now, one of our central themes has been that most Kimuras involve the attempt to get your opponent's hand behind his back. This is true when your intention with the Kimura is to break his arm. But there are many functions of a Kimura that have nothing to do with breaking arms. Kimura is not only a superb method of joint lock, it's also a superb method of control. Trap Kimuras don't even attempt to put the hand behind the back, rather they attempt to control the head. As a result, they can lead into other forms of attack, such as arm locks, triangles, back attacks, etc., even leg locks. And these are very, very popular in competition. My own students are very well known for the use of trap Kimuras. So for example, an opponent comes in with a head to the inside single leg. From situations like so, we can often get a figure 4 grip, a Kimura here on my training partner. Now his hands are in front of his body, so there's no real danger of a Kimura as a submission hold here, but you'll notice that the primary control that I have over him is over the head and shoulders through this Kimura grip. Now, from here, I just sweep my arm through, and as a result, I take him from a single leg situation to one where it's quite easy for us to form a T relative to my opponent. When he goes to turn into me, he finds it's quite difficult. The Kimura grip, even though his hand is in front of him, the Kimura grip is not functioning as a submission threat. It is functioning as a control. The more he tries to turn in, the more he exposes a bottom hook with my right knee, a top hook with my left knee. And then from here, as he tries to fight his way up to his feet, he finds himself in situations where he can be turned over and taken into various forms of back control, arm locks,
subsequent Kimuras, etc., etc. Okay, so these forms of Kimura do not involve putting the hand behind the back. Rather, they involve flipping an opponent over onto his back into a situation where my body forms a T relative to him, the so-called T Kimura. From any T Kimura position, you have a vast choice of potential finishes. You can just get up on top and pin him. You can take his back, as just demonstrated. You can go into arm locks, other forms of Kimura, etc., etc. A natural question to ask is, okay, what do I do here? You just told us that the whole thing was to put the hand inside the thigh and stop the hand going behind the back. This guy doesn't even want to put my hand behind my back. What do I do now? Okay, let's have a look at this. Okay, I'm here and on a single leg. And Placido goes in and takes a trap Kimura. Whenever someone gets to this position, some things we can do. What he wants to do is sweep his leg through and put me on my back. If I just stay where I am, Placido can get up on top. And now we can go into all the Kimuras that we just saw previously. Okay, so staying where I am is not really an intelligent option. Okay, if I try to get up, he'll take my back, he'll go into other moves. So I'm caught in a dilemma. I can't stay where I am, and if I just naively turn into him, he takes my back or goes into other submissions. So what do I do? Okay, let's have a look at this. The second, someone goes in here and locks up. One very good option here is a peek out. There's a sense here in which I have to admit the single leg has kind of lost its steam at this point. If I just hold on to the single leg without doing anything, I'm going to get turned over. So I've got to do something different from just a single leg. So what we're going to do is a peek out, where I swish in my feet, and from here my head retracts. So my head was to the inside. That was a good thing for single legs because I'm always trying to put them down. But that's actually the direction he wants to go, so that's not going to help us here. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take our body and we're just going to peek our head straight out. Now I'm going to put my head, I put my head over my training partner's spine. Now, do you remember what we said earlier, guys, about reaching through and gripping here and locking? So if Placido tried to take my hand behind the back, his own ribcage would stop him. I can completely relax my arm now. If my hand wasn't there, there's a danger he could turn and put my hand behind the back. When I put my hand through, even if I don't grip, he goes to turn, and he's fighting the actual bones of my arm. Won't be able to do so. Now from here, I just take my knee to his elbow, and we use a knee slip. Okay, and as a result, we're in perfect position to probably lock up a seatbelt from here. And then from these situations, we go straight on through and block on our training partner's back. So once again, from here, we go in on our training partner and we're in single leg situation. He comes down, locks Kimura, and we're in place. Okay. From here, I take my body in, like I'm putting pressure on the man, and then I just slip and peek out. My hands just come straight through and we lock. I put my ear on his back. The further my head is from him, the more capacity he has to create problems. So I want my ear coming up towards his back and my head coming towards his head. My hand punches through, sir, and grips right here. So when he tries for Kimura, nope, it's not going to happen. I put one knee next to the other, and then from here I use the height advantage to punch my knee through and lock. Now we come right up and lock an initial seat belt, knees down. Now from here, we just place our knee right behind our training partner and find ourselves in perfect position to lock up our usual back attacks. Once again, we have an opponent in front of us. We come through into a single leg situation. If I'm an idiot and drive him over, I'm just giving him what he wants. That's what he wants. So we can't hit the usual cutbacks, etc., that we hit out of single leg. Now from here, he goes in, we put an initial pressure on our training partner, and then we peek out. My head initially driving in just goes back in the opposite direction, and we come straight out and put our hand through, setting up. There's the grip. Now with my head over his head, my outside leg comes up. I just put my knee on the back of his elbow and punch out.
in the situation. We lock up an initial seatbelt, our head goes in, we roll through, bottom hook in, body triangle, and we're in position to strangle. So this is a practical and common sense way to deal with this very commonly seen situation. We're looking at the idea of a kimura where my opponent is not using it as a submission hold. So he's not really interested in putting my hand behind the back right from the start. Rather, he's using kimura as a means of control rather than submission. These are usually some kind of trap kimura, where they use the kimura hold usually in unison with their legs to flip you over into a position where you're perpendicular to each other and his body forms a T relative to your body. This can enable him to control you for long periods of time. This puts me in a simple dilemma. If I just stay where I am, he gets up on top of me and pins me with a kimura. That's obviously bad. If I try to turn into him to escape, I expose my back to him. I expose my arm to him. And in some cases, variations of triangles where things go from bad to worse. So this really is a difficult situation to deal with. Let's have a look now at a situation where our opponent not only gets the trap kimura, but successfully turns us over into a T kimura. So previously, we were in front of our training partner. We got in on a single leg situation, and he went down and locked up like so. In the previous move, we were able to hit a peek out, where we went into our training partner, and then from here, I withdrew my head, put my ear on his back, and came up to the far wrist. We hit a nice peek out, okay? This time, my opponent sweeps through and successfully takes me over, okay? From here, it's only a matter of time till he takes my legs over my head, separates my arms, and now locks the kimura in tight. Let's face the camera. Now, if I just stay here, he gets up on top. Not only does he get up on top, he gets up with a kimura, where he can start submitting me by putting my hand behind my back. If I try to turn up into him, I end up exposing space for two knees. Once a guy gets two knees around you on either side, he's got your back. He hooks over, takes my body in this direction here, and now he's got my back, okay? Alternatively, he could have gone for my arm, he could have gone for triangles. So, from a situation where we start off in on the leg, and he goes to sweep through. In situations like this, as soon as he breaks the grip, what should I be looking to do? When I go to turn into him, his intention is to keep my hand down by the hip. That's where he's at his most successful. That means that when I go to turn into him, he has a long lever to make it difficult for me to turn in. The more I try to turn up, the more I expose my body to his left knee. And as the left knee goes in, now he's got a knee on either side of my body, and it's very likely he's either going to go to my back or bring the leg over my head, and go into arm bars, or over my shoulder and go into triangles. Triangles. Like so. Okay? None of these are good options. So, when I feel my opponent whip me over, separate my hands, what should I be looking to do? He wants my hand here. Okay? I want the exact opposite. One thing he can't stop me doing is using this hand. I can't be naive and have the hand floating in the breeze where he can trap it with a crucifix or triangle.
Triangle the okay, over the head.
So I've got to keep my hand close to my body. This means the only real option he will have is a head scissor, where he comes through and locks the head by itself. Okay, it's not the end of the world. It's a pain in the ass, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, now when we're in this situation, he wants the hand low on the hip. Okay, I don't have to worry about a kimura finishing hold yet. There's no way I can put my hand behind the back in this position. I have to worry about the control. So what I'm going to do is go down his body, because right now my head is on top of his belly like a pillow, and it's preventing me moving freely. I want to go down the body and connect my hands. Why? Because ultimately, I want to bring my hands up here. It suits Placido to have the hand down by the hip. Normally, we like this, okay? That's good to prevent the hand going behind the back. But Placido doesn't want to put my hand behind the back. He wants to keep it pinned to the hip so that I can't turn into him. That's what his interest is here. He's not trying to finish me with a Kimura. He's trying to control me with a Kimura. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down the body, get our head towards the floor, and connect our hands. Make a strong hand grip. No matter how strong Placido's hand grip, one thing I can always do is bring my left hand up close. Okay? Now, my head is free. As Placido tries to bring his legs over my head, our whole intention is to walk this way. Walk with me. And we get into a circling walk where he can't really control me and I can't control him. Do you see what's happening, guys? What have we got? Wrist exposure. Bang, the wrists are off. Okay? Do you remember earlier in this video, we talked about wrist exposure? Did you notice that when we did the escapes to Kimura as a submission, wrist exposure wasn't used that much? Okay, it was used a little, but not much. But against T Kimuras, it gets used a lot. Okay, so we start off in front of a training partner. We get in single leg situation. He sweeps through, separates my hands. Okay, first things first, he wants the hand going down the body. We connect. We bring our body down. We bring the hands up close. As we walk the corner, you'll notice his wrist is exposed to me. It's right there in front of me. And as a result, we can easily take it off. Okay, once my elbow comes down, we're in a symmetrical position. It's pretty much 50-50 at this point. I make a choice. If I feel I'm faster than Placido, I'm going to bring my body up on top. I'm 53 years old with a hip replacement, so it's unlikely I'm going to be faster than Placido. So I'm just going to have my hands in front. As he gets up on top of me, we're just going to post, bring our legs in front, and we're in business back at neutral. So once again, we start off in front of a training partner. We're in single leg situation. From here, he sweeps through. We come all the way down his body. We start rotating with my hands up close to my chest. Now the hands are right there in front of me. We slip. From here, he comes up on top. We post. The legs come back in. And we're ready now to go into the various attacks that we favor in these situations. So there's a practical way to deal with this annoying problem. Let's look at another. This time, Placido's back will be to the camera. When I know, obviously we've been told, when I know my opponent favors these entries into T Kimura, I'll play a trick with his ankle. I come in on a single leg. When he goes into this position, watch his ankle. He's got to sweep the ankle through. When he sweeps the ankle through, he can take me over to T Kimura. So what do? I won't let the ankle sweep through. I come in here, single leg, I go here. Go for Kimura.
I can't sit through.
Can't sit through. Now, I come forward and I bump. Watch Placido's hands. His hand goes to the mat. Now from here, what do you think's next? Straight out. If I go in a straight line, my head catches. So I take my rear leg and I step. And as a result, we're right there on our training partner's back. So let's have a look at this again. This is actually my favorite way of dealing with people who are good in this position. As much as I teach the previous move, that's when things have gone all wrong. That's when the guy got the move on you. But obviously in life, it's easier to use the old American expression of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you can prevent the guy getting you to that position in the first place, everything's easier. So we start off, single leg situation. He needs to sweep the foot through. So I come in and control all the way down here. So I go from single leg to here. He sweeps through.
Nope.
Impossible. Now, watch my shoulder and the hip. I bump and I force his hand to the mat. As I push in, I reposition the angle and I pull my hand up on his back, ready to attack. Okay? So we're combining the peek out with an ankle block that prevents the position from even happening. He goes to peek out, he goes into his knee slide. Go. And we go straight in. Now, as you gain in confidence, you'll start bringing your hand down earlier and earlier. So here we are, single leg situation. Straight down to the heel. Again, Normally, in a single leg, we lock in like so. When I feel this guy go into his position, I'm already down there to the ankle. He goes to sit through. Difficult. Now I bump, that forces hand to the mat. I change the angle somewhat so that I can peek out and take the back. Here's an alternative method of doing this. If you feel your movement down to the ankle is too late, use your elbow instead. We lock up, and I take my elbow down here to the heel. He goes to sit through.
Challenging.
Very difficult. The only danger with this one is the guy can hit you with a rolling omoplata. Okay? So just be aware of that one potential problem. It's not much of a problem, to be honest with you. He comes through. If I block with the elbow, if I do a good job of bringing my shoulder forward, it's freaking difficult for the guy to hit a rolling omoplata. Okay, so I'm driving forward. Now, as always, we change direction to find ourselves on our training partner's back. Okay, but the safest one for jiu-jitsu purposes, single leg. And from here, come down to the heel. And from here, I drive in. I get my training partner's hand to the floor. Then I just change direction and go straight through onto our training partner's back. One more time. I've got a training partner in front of us. We come in, single leg situation, catch. Now from here, hand goes to the floor and straight into the back. If I feel, for whatever reason, that from here things are problematic, there's always the option of taking the elbow over the top. So the elbow is in behind. And again, that forces his hands to the floor, makes him release the Kimura, and we go in. Okay? So these are practical ways for us to get out of that potential roll from single leg situation down to Chi Kimura. Now, a lot of what we've been going over applies in Kimuras in a wide variety of circumstances. Now, please understand that Kimura is one of the most versatile of all the submission holds. It can be done from top position, bottom position, standing, ground, pretty much anywhere. Gi, no gi, it's equally effective. A movement which is not seen so much in standard everyday jiu-jitsu grappling, but which is common in mixed martial arts, where there's much more movement from feet to floor, up to standing, is a Kimura, usually starting in turtle position, and then the action migrates to the feet. Okay, so we might have a situation where Placido locks on, say, a Kimura here or here, and then from the situation starts standing up on us. So we end up in situations where we're standing, then he turns around and faces us. He can either whip the arm behind my back, or he can put a leg between my legs, and then from here go into Sumigaeshi and throw me with Sumigaeshi. Okay, so this is a common thing. It started on the floor and went up to the feet. It can happen on either arm. It can happen on near side, or it can happen on far side. Okay. Whenever we see this kind of thing going on, I'll demonstrate it first out of near side Kimura. Okay, he takes near side Kimura. Your first thing here should always be go through and take that handlebar grip. That puts an immediate limit on how far he can move my hand behind the back. Once I take this grip, he tries to put the hand behind the back. You'll find that he can move, just stop moving your head and just move your arms. From here, you'll find he can move the arm about 3 or 4 inches and no further, and it won't be enough to hurt you. Guys, you have to believe in this, okay? Go to crank my arm.
No.
It's not going to happen. Literally, he would have to go through the bones of my right arm to do that. So it's not going to happen, okay? So initially, we're here working down on the floor, and I see him climb up to a Kimura. Boom, I throw it in. He goes to finish it. Difficult. Now, our first reaction here should be to put our knee in behind and clear it, and then go and attack his back. But let's say we're a little late, or he's just very good at getting up to the feet. Okay. The second we get in here, we want to put weight over the shoulder. The more my head goes back, the more potential there is for harm. So I want my head over the near shoulder. Okay. Now from here, I just take my knee and I just bump his knee, so that we bump him straight down to the floor. If he doesn't let go, he's going to face plant. Okay. So most people, given a choice between a heavy face plant from standing and putting the hand on the floor, will take that as an option. So he starts down, We start off just in like so. He goes near side Kimura. I come in and save the initial problem by locking like so. Placido goes up vertical. As soon as we see that, we put our head right over the same side. Now I put my knee in as a blocker and we put his hands on the floor. His hands are on the floor, there's no Kimura. Okay? Now as he goes to a covered 4-point position, you're in a perfect position to break him down to the mat and start controlling him down on the floor. Okay? What if he goes far side Kimura? He locks up on the far side. My first reaction to this, you probably guessed it, is to lock in here. As we go up to the feet, I will transfer to the other side. Now from here, I just put my knee in front, bump his hands down to the mat, break him down to the floor, and we're looking good. All it requires is a transfer to the other side. So, near side or far side. He goes far side Kimura. My reaction, feed the hands through. If I don't feed the hands through, that's when problems start. The minute we see him feeding through, boom, that puts a limit on how far he can go. He goes. Now, he gets up quickly, I get up with him. I transfer to the other side, I put my knee in place, I bump his hands down to the mat, put his shoulder on the floor, and we're looking good. Okay? Now, please understand that a lot of times, you won't even have to do that. He goes in, takes far side Kimura. You go in, get your hand in place. When you see this kind of thing going on, very often just a simple drag back. Go to stand up, buddy. A simple drag back will put him down. It's hard for the guy to get up, okay? When you go to get up normally, you have base, and you come up like so. When you have a Kimura, you have no base. Put your right hand on my upper body. On the other side, obviously. Move back where you were. Put your right hand on my lat muscle. Now, just give me a push. This time, give me a pull. Okay? Now give me a push.
Nope.
Now give me a pull.
Nope.
You've got base. 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Now I've only got 2. Push. Okay? So we use this principle. When someone locks Kimura, they've only got 2 bases of support with the floor. Got to stand up on me. Okay? So it's quite easy to stop people standing up using this simple method. Your first reflex from here, he gets Kimura, is this. Because my biggest fear is he stands, gets a height advantage, and breaks my arm. Go to stand, break my arm. Okay, so stop the danger of the hand going behind the back first. If you're not worried about the hand going behind the back, all the fear goes out of the position, and then you can start playing your game. Okay, so once again, far side Kimura. He locks it up, bang, straight through. Okay, because it's far side, I won't put my head over this time, not from this side. Okay, if he's so powerful here, okay, he's got such good base that he does succeed in getting up. I'll get up on his left and then transfer to the right. Got to put the Kimura behind my back. I just put my head right over his shoulder. The further my head over his lower back, the more potential problems. So the head goes over. Okay? Now, from here, I can dog him to the mat, where I just take my legs out and straight down. Now we're in perfect position to go in and score all our usual attacks from this position. Okay? He goes near side Kimura. Face this way so you can see the action. Immediately, hand goes in, catches. Here, because we're near side, I'd probably just go with an elbow slip. If I'm late, I could also bring him over my knee. If I'm so late that he's able to stand, this hand inside makes it relatively safe. Okay. Now we can knee bump, force the hands down, or we can just use a knee drop. Okay. If you're going to use a knee drop, Like a strong body.
Yes, sir.
Don't just do this. It's worthless. Put your knee right there next to his knee. Put all the weight onto his toes. Now there's the critical tipping point. I can feel even the smallest pressure will put him down. And then just push off your right foot. And down he goes. Don't just drop like a stone. Like a strong body. Strong. If I just drop, no good. Now, I put weight. The weight's going over the toes. There's the point of Kazushi. Any push now, puts him straight down and into a situation where you can control him. So these are some simple ways to use the principles we've looked at previously to ensure that no matter where we go, standing, ground, anywhere, the same principles apply. What I want to do is to give you guys a game plan that will work in competitive situations against people who know what they're doing with Kimura. The easiest thing in the world is just to go out on video and just show some moves. Here's a certain kind of Kimura, here's a defense to it. That works well at white belt level when you're first starting off, you don't have much direction, that's fine. At world championship level, it obviously stops working because your opponent knows damn well what the basic counters to the moves are, and they've got 4 or 5 steps ahead of you on that. So you need to go further than this. You need to start thinking conceptually about getting out of submission holds rather than just memorizing a small set of moves, which only cover a small set of contingencies. So what I want to do is give you guys a conceptual approach to defending Kimura. This is a layered approach where you start to see Kimura for what it is. It's a series of events over time, each of which becomes progressively more threatening to you. Okay, that's very important, so I'm going to say it again. Every Kimura is a kind of set of sequences where each step of the sequence becomes more and more threatening to you until you end up in situations where your hand's behind your back, your head's completely controlled, he's got a figure 4, and it's done. Okay, your arm's breaking. The first step in that layered approach is the wrists. So if I'm in Placido's guard, the first thing he needs to do is to seize control of my wrist. We know that when someone gets a hold of the wrist, they can only exert so much control. There's only so many directions he can cover with wrist control. As soon as I identify what the weak direction is, he grabs it, I go in the direction of weakness. Okay, so here, stop. I can't go into him, it's blocked, but I can easily go away. So when he sits up, it's done. Okay, if we're down on the floor, and he's side control, and he seizes my wrist, I can use my legs to peel it off. Okay? Every time I feel the threatening grip, I just elbow skate directly into the move. As soon as I feel the wrist come in, and it's gone. Okay? If I'm behind someone, wrist control is a little different. He seizes a Kimura, Kimura, and from here, you come in and you seize the wrist. And take it away. So the first layer of defense is always at the wrists. Whenever I feel him grab a Kimura, if I'm behind him, I will grab the other wrist. If I'm in front of him, then I use directionality, but I'm always defending at the wrists. If I'm underneath them, I'll probably have to use some kind of elbow escape. Okay, if I'm in a T Kimura situation, then I'll probably have to use some kind of rotation and expose his wrist and snap them off. Okay, but your first layer of defense will always be the wrists, regardless of whether you're in a T Kimura, whether you're behind him, whether you're standing, whether you're on the ground, whether you're underneath him, or in his guard. The wrist is the first layer of defense. Okay, if my opponent gets a hold of my wrist and is starting to lock up a figure 4, now he has 2 hands on my wrist, and it won't be so easy now just to pull it off. In these situations, we have to start moving into the second layer of defense, which is my opponent's elbow.
our understanding is pretty damn clear. If our opponent manages to control the elbow and get his elbow higher than our elbow, it becomes an effective fulcrum over which he can break my elbow. Okay, so we always want to create situations where we slip our elbow. And a crucial part of your ability to avoid kimuras becomes the skill of elbow slipping. So if someone's in turtle position and they seize the kimura, I want to be able to slip their elbow. So I take my knee and I use a leg assist or a knee assist, where I use the knee on the same side to help me to slip my elbow free. The second my elbow is free, there's no more danger of a kimura, and now we can start going into counter offense and start to attack this fella. Okay. Conversely, in a situation where someone has a kimura, north-south position, from in here, I want to be able to use movement to come around the corner and create situations where my knee can assist in an elbow slip. If the arm is positioned in such a way that the knee cannot do it, then we will use a hand assist and pull through. In some cases, just movement by itself will prove to be sufficient, particularly if you hit an explosive bridge and a push into your opponent and your elbow comes through. Okay? So elbow slipping becomes the second crucial line of defense, regardless of whether we're behind people or in front of them. Now, we're looking at a conceptual approach to defending kimura that will work in a very wide array of circumstances. We've seen that the first layer of defense is the wrist. The second layer of defense is the elbow, where we're trying to slip our elbow from outside of his. If these things are proving to be difficult and our opponent has gotten through into a pretty late stage in the kimura, then the third layer of defense is freeing your head so that your whole body can move. Okay? Now, please understand that if you're on top of your opponent in certain situations, you already have mobility because your head is free. So, for example, if I'm across my opponent's side, my head is free. There's literally nothing controlling my head. In these situations, I automatically have body mobility, which is usually manifested as a forward roll. So as my opponent puts my hand behind my back, I'm in a situation where I can go through and position my hand safely and keep the hand in front of me. My body mobility was expressed with a forward roll. Now as Placido comes up on top of me, we're in a situation where we can use continued mobility to turn. He wants to cover both sides of my body, but my body mobility means we get ourselves in a situation where we can go through and slip the elbow. Okay? So in situations where my head is not controlled, and the most obvious examples are situations where you're in top position and your opponent doesn't have any form of triangle around your head. So for example, top half guard, let's say I'm in my opponent's half guard. Here, Placido has some control of my lower body, but no control of my head. So even as he puts my hand behind my back, there is no reason why I can't start the action of rolling through and getting my hand inside. Okay? Once my hand is inside, we're in situations where we can start to use body mobility to come on out and escape these various positions. Now, things get trickier when you're underneath people, okay? And they get trickier by degree. If Placido just has me in a standard north-south situation, where he just has his two knees pinched around my head, like so. Here, he has some degree of head control, but not that much. So there's no reason why I can't take my hand, let's reposition. There's no, bring your knees on top. There's no reason why I can't place my hand here as a pushing mechanism, and that combines with the movement of my lower body to bring my head out, okay? From situations like this, the knee slip is on, and we're back in guard and ready to play, okay? Now that will become more complicated the further my opponent comes in. Complication is maximized when my opponent takes a step over my bicep. And now he traps not only my shoulders, but my arm as well. So if Placido was in here and he lost kimura and he steps his knee over my bicep like so. In the worst case scenarios, they hook the bicep, almost like a quasi triangle. Now you're truly in trouble. Okay, once someone locks us in kaku, kimura becomes 10 times more dangerous. We'll look first at this situation here, okay?
first things first, I have to free my arm. Secondly, always the major consideration, I can't let my arm go behind my back. So I'm very cognizant of holding either my own stomach or hand inside my thigh. Your choice, they're both good, okay? From situations like this, he wants to take my hand and lift it and start to put it behind my back. So we want to make sure we keep everything in close. Now, from here, I can't do what I did previously. I can't just post on my training partner's side like so. So we're going to start with a little bump that lightens my training partner's knee. He's got all his weight, pin my arm. He's got all his weight here on my arm. I can't free my arm, okay? So from here, we're going to start with a little bump that lightens his arm and gets our arm out. Once my arm is in free, you know where to go. We post right in here, and I use my legs as a form of pendulum. Now the knee comes in, we elbow slip, legs come around, and we're in position now to go into our various counter attacks. So once again, we're stuck in here like so. First, don't let your arm go behind your back. Keep it in here. Now, I give a little bump that lightens his leg and puts weight on his toes instead of his knee. Put all your weight on your knee. Now, I can't move my arm forward. It's stuck by his knee. But the foot is light. When I bump, weight goes onto the toes. Now my arm goes through in front. I post in the hip. Now, free the head. Once the head comes free, the knee goes inside. Elbow slip. Legs go in, and we're in business now. Many forms of counterattack that we can employ. Okay? So this will be our third layer of defense. Free the head so that we can use body mobility to start turning inside our opponent's kimura and slip that elbow free. We've been looking at this idea that whenever we come out of a submission hold, your opponent will be in a rather extended and vulnerable position, and that we should be trying as much as possible to counterattack so that we don't just get satisfied with coming out of a submission hold, but always looking to get some kind of meaningful counterattack to sway things in our favor. Here's a really valuable rule of thumb, which I teach to all of my students. If we're in top position against kimura, and we manage to turn it into some form of counterattack, begin with a counter arm lock. The good news is the counter arm locks are relatively simple to step into if we have good head position. The bad news is the version of the arm lock or Jujigatami which comes out of this is relatively weak. So my advice to you is convert the initial relatively weak counter submission into a much stronger form of submission. Okay? What does that mean? I'm in kimura from, say, half guard. If Placido gets my hand behind my back, it can be a real issue. Okay, so our first thing from here is always to put the hand in a position of relative safety. Okay, now at some point we want to start the action of freeing our trapped leg. From situations like this, it's not so difficult for us, once we free the knee of the trapped leg, to start taking our foot on top, and then from here, freeing the leg altogether. The second we free the leg altogether, if we've done a good job of keeping the hand in front, when Placido goes to move me and throw me over his body, it's quite difficult. Now, the danger here is that Placido can throw my body through and spin underneath me and come around into various forms of attack. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to take our head and reposition it to the other side. If my head stays here, that's when he can whip through, and then from here even sit me down and get on top. So it's important, once I keep my hand in front, put my hand on this side and step my leg over. So when he goes to whip through, you won't be able to get anything meaningful out of it. You, on the other hand, are going to get great opportunities to step directly into a version of Jujigatami. Now, guys, the good news is you've just stepped into a nice counter-offensive position. The bad news is this version of Jujigatami is not particularly strong. This is what we call a quarter Jujigatami. I have a crossface leg that's repositioned. I do have a crossface leg, that's good, but I have no torso leg. Normally in Jujigatami, you have a leg across
to go across the torso. So you have 2 controlling legs. You can even strengthen that control with locked feet. You can take a foot through and get 2 cross faces. All of those are very strong methods. When you only have the quarter jujigatami, it's notoriously weak. It's a very easy move for Placido to employ the turning escape against. Okay? So I'm not going to recommend to you, when you're in this situation, that you try to finish with this hold. It'll work up to a certain level, and then it won't work beyond that. So what I'm going to recommend is you go through and lock up the figure of 4 on your opponent's arm, and you go from a decent lock to a tremendous lock. We go into 3/4 juji and lock in like so. Now, when Placido goes to rotate out, you have 2 cross-faced legs. He goes into a turning escape, and it's exceptionally difficult. If he locks up and decides to turn into you, he puts himself directly into a particularly strong form of Senkaku, the ankle Senkaku, where my knee comes down towards the floor. As he gets up on top, he finds himself in a situation where I can thread my hands through and then go into a particularly strong strangulation. Okay, so once again, we start off half guard situation. From here, my opponent locks up Kimura. First responsibility, don't let the hand go behind the back. Put it inside your own thigh, for example. If you're having a hard time putting it inside your own thigh, put your leg up, scoop it in. Now, from these situations, as my hand starts coming up north, we're in a position now where we can start to free our trapped leg. It starts at the knee. Then from situations like this, we go through and extract. The danger now is my opponent can whip me through and end up here. So it's important that I bring my head to this side. If my head is over his body, whip through, he can take me over. When I bring my head to this side, he goes to whip me through, I won't move. So I take my head from far side to near side. Now, I step over his body. If he went to whip through now, be even less successful. And it's pretty easy for us to sit right into a quarter jujigatami. This is a decent finishing position, but not a great one. It'll work up to a certain level, but not beyond. So from situations like this, it's not so hard for us to thread our foot through and turn it into something better. Either a 3/4 juji if you want to break his arm, or the ankle Senkaku if you want a really high percentage way of strangling people. As he tries to come up on top, you're going to find your knee goes down towards the floor. You can thread your hand through, and then from this position, you get enormously tight strangulations for the finish. So my recommendation to you fellas is this. If you're in top position and you've succeeded in getting to a situation where you can rotate around your opponent's head, go in for the arm lock, but don't be satisfied with the basic quarter jujigatami. It's a decent finishing hold, but it's not a great finishing hold. Make the conversion and get your foot inside to a great finishing hold. Either 3/4 juji, or even better, the ankle Senkaku, the triangle using your ankle as the focal point of the strangle. These will give you a much higher finishing percentage against your opponent's Kimura than just being happy with the Jiu-Jitsu 101 method of stepping around and trying your luck with a quarter jujigatami. Now, an obvious question here is, okay, that's if I'm on top. What about if I'm on bottom? What's my counter offense now? Again, I'm going to give you a very clear guide. When you can spin out, you're going to have opportunities to go into jujigatami from bottom. These look good in theory. Okay, it looks like, oh man, he spun out and he went right into jujigatami. It looks awesome. But in practice, because you're so far underneath your opponent with minimal control over their body, you don't even have a guard position, you're just kind of throwing your legs at them, the chances of you getting them and finishing them with this hold are minimal. So my philosophy is this. Go into your opponent, threaten the jujigatami, and get a reaction. the reaction will always be the same. You know what it is ahead of time. Your opponent will posture up and easily pull away from the rather weak Jujigatami. But the only way they can pull away from the weak Jujigatami is to leave their legs behind. And that will give you an excellent entry into the legs. And that, sir, will be a very high percentage finishing hold. So my advice to you is simple. When you are counter-attacking Kimura from bottom position, use the layered defense philosophy that we've looked at already. Spin into a an insincere Jujigatami, where you don't really have a true intention of finishing with it. If you do get it, hey, awesome, congratulations. It probably says more about your opponent than it says about you. Then from there, as he pulls away, he will leave you what was really your intention all along, the legs. And that is where you can start finishing very good people. So we'll look at a situation where Placido has me in a scary Kimura, where not only does he have the Kimura, he's stepped over my bicep. And he's really looking like he's doing a good job on me here, okay? First things first, we're never gonna let our hand go behind our back for free. Second thing, I have to unweight Placido's right leg so that I can free my trap the right arm. So we're gonna give a little bridge that unweights the knee and lets me get my hand in front. Now we're gonna post on our training partner's hip. We're gonna use the leg motion that we talked about earlier today and whip and kick our legs around the corner. We're gonna fake a Jujigatami. Okay, Placido is at a level where a 3/4 Juji like this from bottom, it's not really much of a threat. Okay, now he can't ignore it. If he ignores it, I'll break his arm. Okay, but realistically, someone your own level, especially if you're a little higher in level, I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen someone finish by this above purple belt. Okay, from here he goes to pull his arm free, and I feel like, oh man, this Juji's not that tight, okay? So I'm already thinking about the transition to what I really wanted all along, the transition into my training partner's legs. From here, I'm going to use a variation 50-50 to go through and lock up. If Placido's smart, several things can happen, okay? If he goes to backstep, if I'm faster than him, I will take my top shoulder and bring it in front of my bottom shoulder for what we call a belly down finish. A belly down finish where my knees point down will prevent my opponent from backstepping. If he backsteps now, he'll shred his own knee. Okay? Be careful when you practice this one in the gym, fellas. You can hurt someone here. Now, if I'm a little slow with my shoulder position and he's a fast athlete, I will follow and put my knee on the floor. Now, there's very little for him to counter with. You have a fantastic breaking position on him. He has a very poor one on you. The big danger now is he has access to my hands. That can be a pain in the ass. He has access to my head. And ultimately, he's looking for access to my elbow. I want to stop all of that by taking my legs over the top. From here, first option, double shoelaces. Okay? This means that my head is now so far away from Placido that if he tries for the head, very difficult. If he tries for the bottom elbow, almost impossible. The only thing he's really got access to is the front hand. And when he tries accessing that, I just use my knee to go over the top and finish it. Okay? Alternatively, I can take my foot and go across the body and lock up here into the favorite of people like Gary Tonin, Gordon Ryan, and recently Craig Jones. This is an inside-outside ashi. One foot goes outside, one foot goes inside. Okay? From here, very, very tight, and it has the virtues of both inside position. This is an inside Senkaku foot, and outside position. This is a 50-50 foot, and that makes for very strong finishes. If you're worried about your opponent counterattacking you, he goes for my heel, just bring it through, and you're right back in inside Senkaku for also very strong finishes. So once again, we start off in a pretty scary situation, let's be honest. He's got a very high quality form of Kimura. He's trapped my arm, he's got excellent control of my head, and I'm in pretty deep trouble. Okay, if he puts the hand behind my back, it's going to be hard for me to recover. Okay, from here, I want to make sure that I put weight onto the foot so that I can move my arm. Right now, the weight's on the knee, I can't move it. So I need to bring the weight back, arm goes under, hip post, I push, I use my legs to bring my head out. I bring
the legs up, and I attack a kind of fake Judy Gatame. I'm not going to say it's fake. If he's not very good, I might be able to finish this. But at World Championship level, this is unlikely to succeed because I don't have a torso leg. My leg is short here, okay? It's just not much control. It's a weak form of control where he can easily post the legs wide with problems. But that's going to leave me what I really wanted all along, the legs, okay? From here, my foot comes through and threads in. You have kind of a quasi 50-50 situation here. I want to transfer the foot across my chest and lock up. If I feel my opponent stays in this position, no reason why I can't just finish it right here with either conventional grips or reverse figure 4 for stronger grips. If my opponent has skills, he's going to backstep. I cannot stay here with my belly facing up. This exposes my hands, my head, and my elbow. So when he backsteps, my knee tracks him, and we come up onto our shoulder. So we're on our inside shoulder like so. Now, I lock double shoelaces. Both my shoelaces on my training partner's hip. When he tries to come forward and get to my elbow, my hands, my head, very, very difficult. Okay, it's a great breaking position. If you still feel he can access your hand, it's causing problems, you might limp the arm out, go back to your grip, and then place the foot in just like so. Now you have a barrier, your knee, between your hands. So when he goes to hand fight now, it's done. If you're worried about him counterattacking your right foot, slip it through. And from situations like this, we're right back in inside Kinkaku. And from here, we can go through and get very strong finishes. So there's our philosophy of counterattacking. The philosophy can be stated very, very briefly. If we're in top position and we find an opportunity to use our mobility because our head is free to go around and counterattack with a quarter Judy Gatame, don't be satisfied with the basic Jiu-Jitsu 101 method of attacking out of quarter Juji. Okay, that will work up to a certain level, but not beyond that. It's a relatively easy submission to escape from. Go the extra distance. Lock up a full Judy Gatame 3/4 style, or even better, an ankle Senkaku. These things are very difficult to get out of, significantly more so than a Jiu-Jitsu 101 quarter Juji, and your finishing percentages will go up accordingly. If you're working from bottom position, on the other hand, use the quarter Juji after you've enacted the various defensive strategies we've looked at in this video already to go into this basic form of Judy Gatame, get a pull away reaction on the part of your opponent. If your opponent is so naive that he can't get out of a quarter Judy Gatame, well then he probably wouldn't have been capable of putting you in a Kimura in the first place. So realistically, if he's good enough to put you in a Kimura, then he's certainly good enough to pull out of a quarter Juji. In these cases, use the quarter Juji as an initial threat to get a pullback reaction that leaves you the real target, which is his legs. And then go into the legs using the method specified, and you get a very, very high submission counter rate against Kimura.